was the play of the season for the Indiana Fever. You had Aliyah Boston down low, getting the block here. As you can see, scoops it up. The ball goes the other way, and Caitlin Clark hits it from that logo there. I mean, technically that's a logo, right? Swish. The play of the season for the Indiana Fever. And when you look at this duo, a lot of the success of the Fever is contingent on how well Aliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark can play together. Thus far, it hasn't been very good. But we saw some signs last night. There were great signs from the Fever as a whole in that game. They look like a team that is learning to play together. Kelsey Mitchell is going to thrive next to Caitlin Clark. I believe Nalissa Smith is going to thrive next to Caitlin Clark. The issue is the fit between Clark and Aliyah Boston, because the big problem has been their synergy hasn't really been there, and it hasn't really worked well in unison because Boston hasn't played fast enough. They haven't been in motion enough. And Boston's game, the idea of feeding her in the post is crowding the space for Clark, because when Boston is posting up in front of Clark and she's trying to throw that post entry pass, that lets the defense zero in on Caitlin. It also constricts the court. What's better is if they're in motion together, if their action is together. And we saw some of that in the second half. You did see some of that in the second half of the game. I mean, I think the first couple of times I've seen them really have success working together in a two-man, two-woman game, if you will. Like on this play, you have Caitlin up top, and Boston comes to set the screen, right? She sets the screen, and then Caitlin finds her, boom, little pocket pass, and Boston wound up finishing on that play. So that was a really nice one. There was another one in that half as well where they worked together and Clark found Boston. And that's the kind of thing that will take the Indiana Fever to the next level. If those two can work together. Here's the other play real quick. Let me pull it up for you. Those are the things that will elevate them as a team, because Boston was obviously a high draft pick in her own right. Here you see, it's while Christy Sides was talking, but you got Caitlin Clark there, and she finds Boston in the middle on the motion, and Aliyah winds up scoring. Yeah. So that is, a big positive sign. Everything was positive for the Fever in that loss to the Sun to me. Now, the question is, can they continue? Because thus far, that pairing hasn't been what I thought it was going to be. I kind of looked at that as a possible Stockton and Malone type of pairing with the pick and roll, dribble handoffs, Clark using Boston's body to get open, get her own shot off, those sort of things. It hasn't been that thus far. In fact, I think you can make the argument they've been a stronger team with Boston off the floor and Clark on the floor. But in order to be the best version of their team, they need to work together. And poor Aliyah Boston, I know she missed that bunny yesterday. She missed the shot at the end of the game, and that was a big, big miss, obviously, in the context of the game. And I saw the report before the game that Aliyah Boston has had to delete her social media because of some of the feedback, and that's a shame, because she seems like such a nice young woman. I mean, you see this here she is outside the arena signing autographs for fans, taking her time to stop and sign autographs, take pictures. 1, 2, 3. So I hate that for Aliyah Boston. I don't want the criticism to become too much. There's a lot of attention around this team, obviously, with Caitlin Clark, and she should have finished that play. It is what it is. But Clark also had some bad plays down the stretch. She had the turnover and then the take foul that was just as costly as Aliyah Boston's missed layup. So just wash those two out. I don't want to see the Caitlin Clark fans ganging up on Aliyah Boston. I'm trying to look at this from a basketball lens, a pure basketball lens, and how this fit can work for the Indiana Fever. But in order for it to work for the Indiana Fever, it needs motion. Boston has to be moving. She's got to get up and down the floor a little faster. She's got to get involved in the action with Caitlin Clark. But we saw the good signs in that second half. And overall, the Fever, remember, have only played the top teams in the WNBA thus far. The Connecticut Sun are a top defensive team in the WNBA. The New York Liberty were in the WNBA finals. Those are the only teams that the Fever have played. And if you look at their growth from game one to that game against the Sun that they almost won, it is huge. They look like they didn't belong on the court against the Sun in the first game. They look like they didn't belong on the court against the Liberty in the second game. In that back-to-back against the Liberty, or the next game against the Liberty, the score wasn't close, but you could see the strides from the Fever. They allowed Caitlin to play her game. I think Christy Sides has adjusted as the season has gone on. Erica Wheeler came out of the starting lineup there, and you started to see a team be built. You started to see some synergy amongst that Fever team. And then in that last game against the Sun, I mean, that's night and day, right? I didn't even mean that as a pun. Sun comes up day, obviously goes down at night. But that was night and day, the way that they played against the Sun. And they really could have won that game, if not for the late turnover from Caitlin, if not for the missed layup from Aliyah Boston. But everything else is coming into play. Caitlin is starting to play her game. We're lucky she didn't actually get hurt. That was scary, right? Like, everybody's heart dropped when she hurt her ankle there. But she seems to be fine. She's really coming into her own. She's doing everything we expected her to do at this level. All the brilliance that we've seen from Caitlin Clark, all that excitement that has been around Caitlin Clark, it's for a reason. It's happening in real time in the WNBA. And I think her other teammates are starting to thrive. They're starting to realize when those passes are going to come. And I think you're going to see Mitchell, and I think you're going to see Smith be really good running mates for Caitlin Clark, as well as the rest of the team as they come into their own. But they're going to need, I guess I should say, that combination with Boston and Clark to work, because they're going to be on the floor together so much. And I saw the first positive signs in that second half against the Sun, because I was getting concerned there. I was getting concerned that it was just not a fit, and their games were too diametrically opposed. Slow and steady versus fast and paced. But there were some positives there. There were some positives there. And for this team to take that next step, that has to really click. And remember, it is so early in the season, because I do consider that win, or that loss, in a sense, a win for the growth of the team. Obviously, it still counts as an L in the standings, and they don't have a win yet. But those wins are coming. Those wins are coming as the schedule eases up a little bit, because you're not going to play the best teams in the league every single game. I think that's the case.